just to give you a little bit of introduction about myself, I've been with IBM almost 31 and a half years, which is a long time. It is as long as it sounds. But it's been fun most of the time, I have to be honest, because I've done lots of different things through that time. I started out working on a mini computer, on a communication system that I really didn't like because I had to keep putting my hands inside the machine, sorting out things so it would work. And the engineered part of my title refers to software, not hardware. So I really, really didn't like that and switched into the operating system business. Then came into the PC group in 1981, and came out here in 1984, and I've been Malden ever since, and was in the internet group for about 10 years. My claim to fame was bringing Usenet into IBM, which let me discover things like Gopher, which let me discover the web, which let me do all sorts of interesting things and make people think I knew a lot. And a lot of it is keeping your eyes open and listening to what other people are saying, which is really a Web 2.0 thought, but it happened way back then. So let me start by asking a few questions, and I really do mean conversation. Most of you are undoubtedly using Web 2.0 applications. Some of you may be using them while I'm talking. Anybody using Facebook right now? Or I meant right now on your phones? Feel free. By the way, I should put in a commercial for my son's Facebook group. He's in high school. He's created a group, Jabba, as in Jabba the Hutt for president. And he's looking for members. He's before Stephen Colbert. So if you join, you'll be happy. So what is Web 2.0? When I talked to Dr. Lennon way back in the summer, I asked a few questions. I said, this is what I wanted to talk about. Look at these questions about Web 2.0. Ask the question, is it a technology? You hear people talking about a Web 2.0 site because it's snazzy, it's got Ajax. Is that it? Is it a social concept? We talk about social networks, Facebook. Today, Google is supposed to announce their open social to allow you to bring in lots of social networks and use the same APIs to talk to them. Is it new? Frankly, no. As I said, a lot of what I did earlier in my career would have been done by Web 2.0 things today. It was just done with plain text interfaces. And also, how is IBM using it? How are other companies using it? Because inside the corporate firewall, inside the corporate environment, there's a little different characterization than if you're out in the public internet. And we have some work going on to try to take advantage of that and see how it works. IBM is unique because we're very large. We're 300,000 odd people, which is a big enough neighborhood for social networking to work. In a 30-person startup, you probably don't need the same tools and the same considerations. You probably know the other people, but you still want to share information. Now, that was what I was originally going to talk about, but that was about 200 points of Google stock price ago. And before the investment in Facebook by Microsoft, valuing it at $15 billion. So there's a new question that's come up. Now, Web 1.0 actually, are we doing it again? Is it a bubble? When's it going to crash? When's it going to pop? What's going to be left over? If I knew the answer to that, I would be retired and not worrying about giving talks. But there's some speculation, and because you're more denizens of the Web 2.0 world than I am, I'm really curious to understand how you're using it, where you get the value out of it, what doesn't work, where it just leaves you cold. The other thing that I could have talked about, and won't in the interest of time, is how this fits in with virtual worlds, Second Life, similar. How many people here are active in that environment right now? Okay, a few. How many have gone there, looked, and said, nah, not for me? And I'm in that mode. Maybe we can talk about that, because one of the advantages of the virtual environments is supposed to be social, but I'm not sure that it is. Since I'm in Sonoma County, not far from O'Reilly headquarters, I would be diligent, I would be not diligent if I omitted Tim O'Reilly's 7 principles. people at O'Reilly, Dale Dougherty is credited with coming up with the term Web 2.0. And there's 7 platforms, 7 principles, and they really do make a difference. And they're not all technology, and they're not all social. So one of them is that the web is the platform. It's not .NET. It's not Silverlight. It's not Corba. It's not Java everywhere. It's the web, because the web is everywhere, and there's good APIs to talk to it. And everyone has figured out how to get the web through corporate firewalls and other firewalls, because it's too useful not to. So you find a lot of services hiding on the web. SOAP is another example of that. Harnessing collective intelligence is an important one. All of us are smarter than any of us. One of the things that Jonathan Schwartz, who's the CEO of Sun, says in his blog, CEO's blogging is an interesting Web 2.0 phenomenon right there, is that there are more smart people working on a problem outside of Sun than there are inside of Sun. And it would be really silly not to take advantage of that. The same thing is true no matter what that organization is. IBM is bigger, but we have the same problem. The US government has that problem. There are a lot of smart people out there. If you can get them working on your problem, directly or indirectly, you get a whole lot of leverage. And one of the places that this happens is in Amazon's Mechanical Turk. Are you familiar with that? It's an interesting trick. They take, if you have a hard problem that can be broken down into small units, you can farm it out to people and pay them a certain amount for each unit of work they do. And they develop APIs to make this possible, and their payment system to make this possible. And it actually works. One of the places that they've used it is for their A9 service, deciding which pictures of the street are better. That's a really hard problem to automate. It's a really easy problem for somebody who's trying to make a few cents in spare time to look at 2 pictures and say, that. They use the same technology trying to search for Steve Fawcett. They use the same technology trying to search for Jim Gray. Those did not work, but when they were searching for Fawcett, they found many other wrecks in the Oregon woods that nobody knew about. So that's one way of harnessing collective intelligence. Another is to put out problems and just ask people to think about them. So-called lazy web requests. You've seen those? I don't know how this is possible. Maybe somebody will figure it out. Sometimes they'll even say, this is a lazy web request. And if it's an intriguing problem, people will deal with it. Data as the next Intel inside. Intel made a lot of money selling microprocessors and getting basically a standard and getting big companies to buy into it. And they branded it, and it works really, really well. Not everybody who uses Intel processors bothers to take advantage of that branding. I don't believe Apple does, because they would rather control the experience themselves. But the next big thing is to get understanding of what data is in the enterprise, what data is in your environment, and take advantage of it and expose it. So Amazon, again, is a great example. They get a huge amount of data from your purchases and your browsing. And real early in their life cycle, they went to the referral system to encourage people to stay within that network. And again, it's very effective. Google does the same thing. They know more about me than I know about me. Sadly confident with that. Some of it's wrong because people send me spam. I'm really not interested in that stuff. But a lot of it is what I search on. If you ask today, it's wireless networking under Ubuntu, which doesn't seem to work so well, and I'm still hunting. So if anybody has some hints on that, I appreciate it. Software release cycle. Apple just came out with Leopard, OS X 10.5, and they sold 2 million copies over the weekend, which is a staggering number. One of the reasons they sold so much is that there was so much anticipation, so much discussion. But operating systems need that kind of behavior. But there isn't a whole lot of excitement about a new release of Gmail, because you don't do anything to get it. It's just there. And they're slowly migrating people apparently to a new release. And they just started iMac. I didn't have to do anything to get that. I just had to wait for them to do it so I could get to my mail on my phone properly fine. It's easy to produce a software release and make it available Some people test it, while other people stay on the old version. Because you don't have to do anything to adapt, you just use it. Lightweight programming models are another big piece of Tim's thought, where you don't have to go into J2EE or Fortran or C or C++, or you do a lot with very simple tools like JavaScript, like Ruby. Ruby on Rails is a really wonderful platform for doing the Web 2.0 system. And the software runs everywhere. And the final one is the rich user experiences, which is the other half of Web 2.0. That's where people say, I got an Ajax app. I was at a talk yesterday at IBM where they're doing an application for analysis of large amounts of data, in this case email, for risky behavior, things that might get you in trouble with the SEC. And they're doing analysis. And their first cut was like Google, with you search for a term or search for a concept, and up pop the answers. And the person who did this showed me the first one. Items 1 through 10 of 47,000 having to do with, in this case, they were using the Enron corpus of data, Chuko. Okay, that doesn't really help them. So they built the Web 2.0 front end on that to let you drill down. Now, this is Web 2.0 in the technology sense, not Web 2.0 in the social sense. That may come later. But just the interactivity makes a big difference. IBM has a site, Many Eyes, which is on our AlphaWorks system, that lets you put data sets on and do Ajax analysis and also socially network about the data. So it has to be a data set you're willing to make public. And one of these classic examples of that is census data, which is already public. Or stock data, you look for things, and people have discussions about it, and it's interesting. So that's Web 2.0 in both directions. Yes?
What was the name of that?
Many Eyes, M-A-N-Y-E-Y-E-S. And I don't have connectivity, but if you go to alphaworks.ibm.com, that's the right one, you'll find it. Where I think if you just Google on Many Eyes, one word, you'll find it. And that's run by a bunch of some of my friends, my colleagues at the Cambridge Research Center. And one of Martin Wattenberg did the baby name guide. If anyone's had a baby in the last few years, or the last 30 years, or the last 50 years, he's taken census data of first names and grabbed it with a nice Ajax front end. So you can see the popularity, the rise and fall of a given name over the years. And it's fun to play with, and people who are having children find this exceptionally useful to see what names they might want to have or avoid. How many Jennifers are there in this room? Better say that before I Google it. How many Jennifers do you need in one first grade class? About 5. Even full names are 5. That there are 3 David Singers in IBM. 2 of them worked with my manager, and we nearly got the 3rd one. This is not a good thing, trust me. So that's what I really had prepared. I have a couple more slides, but I really want to save them for the end. So I want to ask you, what do you do with Web 2.0? How many? I did ask who's on Facebook, and it was basically unanimous. Facebook came out initially at Harvard as the Facebook for a small group of people to better know each other, and it turned out to be really, really useful. And eventually they opened it up to people who weren't students. MySpace went through that path earlier. How many of you were on MySpace earlier in your lives? How many of you are still using MySpace actively? Okay. For the ones who left, let me ask, why'd you leave? Just for curiosity. Go ahead.
I left because of all the spam.
Okay.
I was going to say the other way around. Facebook is too noisy for me. It's hard for me to, there's so much stuff on the screen at the same time. I'm like, ah! Whereas MySpace is pretty simple. Well,
Okay.
at least
At least in your circle, which is all that really matters. And I'm serious about that. It's really a way to keep track of people you care about.
Very time consuming.
Time constraints?
Time consuming.
Oh. So did you move from MySpace to Facebook, or did you just walk away from it all?
I walk away from that.
Okay. You're not alone. I'm hearing that from people too. I know. Yeah.
I just have a question. Has there been a mass migration from MySpace to Facebook? Is this documented?
It's certainly talked about. I don't know if it's documented,
Pretty sure.
but go ahead.
I'm pretty sure I've read articles about that.
Yeah, I've read a number of articles about it, and a lot of it is MySpace went very commercial. The spam was definitely a problem. And groups would move en masse. Again, I'm going to pick on my son. I hope he never sees this tape. But he's now in 12th grade. So 2 years ago, everyone in his high school was on MySpace. And then last year, suddenly, everyone in his high school moved to Facebook. Just one jump away. And it was because it was too noisy, there was too much spam. Facebook was a slightly more protected environment, especially for high schoolers, because you can't get into their network unless you have legitimate access. But it provided better facilities. I find that the applications, I have an iPhone, so I'm limited to web applications on it until they open it up, please. And
I agree with that one.
yes, well, I did have a jailbreak before the 1.1 upgrade, and I got through it, didn't break, no problems. But there weren't very many applications I found useful,
Yeah.
and that's why I didn't bother to jailbreak it again.
Mine actually came with 1.1,
Okay,
so I couldn't do it. But
there is a jailbreak now available. It's using an exploit TIFF, and one of the things it does is it fixes the exploit, which I think is cute. So if you look at, I think it's on the unofficial Apple weblog site. You can get the pointer, it's just a day or so ago. But I digress. And that's what Web 2.0 does. So people moved, and one of the reasons that they moved, I think, was the spam and protection. But as I said, the applications, the windows I keep open on mobile Safari are Facebook, Twitter, my blog reader, and a launcher. And that's it. Because I find those useful all the time. Blogs are one of the things that are Web 2.0 that don't have the Ajax experience. They don't have the fancy discussions, but they have a lot of the long tail collective intelligence piece. I've been blogging since early 2000, and I find it both useful and therapeutic. If you look at my blog, there are postings all over the place. Some of them are technical. Sometimes I'm blogging something that I don't want to forget. And I did some of that last night. Some of them are fun. Some of them, when my mom died, were really more therapeutic for me. And it's all out there, and people comment. So there's a social circle that built around that. There are people who I consider my friends who I've actually gone and visited that I've met through that. Before that, there were news groups. Is Usenet a familiar term? And how many people actually follow it? To any extent. You can't follow all of it, obviously, and it's now 99% spam. But there are some news groups that are valuable. And again, I consider that to be an early Web 2.0 phenomenon that predates the web. I was involved with Usenet Usenet itself starting in about '89, because I needed to bring in Miss.Kids. My son was born in 1990, so dating him, certainly. But Miss.Kids was all Signal in those days. It was really, really important because we were new parents and we didn't have any friends who were new parents, so we wanted to ask people. And at the time, my connection was a dial-up, so I asked something and I get it back the next day. And that was frustratingly slow. So IBM happened to have a connection with ARPANET on our mainframe, and I figured out how to bring Usenet in to our internal network with no new security holes. That was my mantra. It might have even been true. Because I wasn't passing bits through, I was passing articles through. I couldn't put executable code in an article at that time. And got it in real time. And as long as I brought it in, I may as well make it available to everyone else in the company. At one point, that gateway was accounting for 20% of the traffic on our internal corporate network, because I was not alone in wanting access to the world. That's really a Web 2.0 thing. It's the rich experience. It's harnessing collective intelligence. And it was really bad code. Yes, Stuart?
Maybe this is too early, but
Never too early.
no, I mean, in terms of your chronological age.
Oh.
initial predecessors or ancestors, like Ruel, Motet, Friendster,
Right.
and so where do you place the pre-MySpace, pre-Facebook
I
phase?
put those as early Web 2.0, pre-Web 2.0, pre-Web in some cases, Web 2.0, because they really did have the social aspects. The well certainly was a very, very social thing, and it had a very interesting policy that made a difference in its usability over, say, AOL or other ISPs. First, it predated ISPs, and it was a bulletin board. And bulletin boards also had this characteristic. But the well very explicitly said, you own your words. So whatever you did there was your own intellectual property, which is not the case on a lot of bulletin boards, which is not the case in other places, Creative Commons licensing and issues like that. But if you look at the terms on some of the sites that we deal with, you find that what you say basically belongs to them. And they can use it in any way they like. That's a difference. So the need has been here for a long time. As I said, newsgroups were around. That was one of the first applications that came out with the internet, or actually when UUNet, UUCP programs came out, was email first, newsgroups second, and other ways of sharing third. The genius of the web was it united all the ways of sharing. So you could use a URL to get to anything.
And the early AOL news groups of their own as well.
Right, the early AOL had their own private news groups. CompuServe had its own private news groups. And they were all in these little walled gardens. And at the time that made sense because there was really no good interchange standard. The fact that standards came out, or that people started embracing standards, made a difference because Metcalfe's law is true. The value of the network is roughly proportional to the square of the number of people on the network, the number of nodes on the network. Until you get to the point that some of those nodes are spam indexing. At that point, the value starts going down because it's too easy to put junk into the system. My email is filtered at least 3 different ways, and it's still probably at least 5% spam that I see. And that's with code that says anything that's in non-English character sets, throw away. Don't even bother me if it's got more than 5 characters of non-English in the title with it from. It wasn't for me. Things like that. So, coming back to the conversation part, you use Facebook and MySpace. Do you use them to make friends, or do you use them to keep in touch with friends you know? How often do you go invite someone to one of those? You know, just looking for ideas.
It's mostly people I've already met. I already know.
Right. And are any of you on LinkedIn? Okay. LinkedIn is another social network, and it's more it's no fun at all. I'll start there. And it's very deliberately no fun at all. It's there to help people get jobs and to collaborate professionally. And it's a very different feel. It's a very buttoned down place, very, very calm. When you get mail, it's often from a recruiter. Nothing wrong with that. That's really a good thing. But you aren't going to have somebody ask to take a movie quiz with you. Or offer to buy you a beer. And it's suffering from that because it's really too boiled down. They just recently started putting faces with people, photographs, which is something that MySpace and Facebook did at the beginning, is something IBM has Measure with Magic Corporate Directory. And one of the things that they've done over the past few years is they've added more personalization to it. And this is Web 2.0 inside the firewall. So everyone is encouraged to have a picture. You are strongly encouraged to have it be a picture of you. Which in the early days it wasn't. People would put up cartoons. I knew one guy who had Brett Favre of Packers. His picture was his picture. And in the beginning that was fun. But as people started using the tool and using the fact that there was a face there that you could visualize, there was social pressure to make the picture of you. Yeah, you might still have your kid or your dog, that's fine, but to make it recognizably you, not Homer. Yeah.
I don't know anyone personally who does that, but I know that there's some people on Facebook who have used pictures of lolcats as their portraits on Facebook.
And there's nothing wrong with that, especially in a totally social environment. You wouldn't see that on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, I might be wearing a tie. But you do see professional people who are Lion 800 recruiters. I'm not sure what that means. I think it's supposed to mean I should feel good for giving the guy my resume. Yeah.
I'm talking about pictures where you place Flickr, for example.
Okay, Flickr is very definitely Web 2.0 in both senses. It's unlike most of the other photo sharing shops, which are also Web 2.0 in the technology wise. Flickr encourages discussion. Flickr encourages commenting. My photos are out on Flickr. If you go to my blog, which is readthisblog.net, you'll see the top posting on it as of the moment is a picture I took of my son last night for Halloween, dressed as an IRS agent. There's no costume. But it's pointing back to my Flickr page, which will show you other things. So it's very much tying things together, tagging, commenting, and giving you the opportunity to socialize and really express human connections, which to me is the big thing that Web 2.0 is emphasizing. The fact that you do it with Ajax, you have snazzy maps, you tag them together, it's wonderful. But it's the human piece of it that strikes me as the most important, the reason these things work, and that some things don't. A new site that's in beta is something called Doppler, D-O-P-P-L-R. Probably .com. Never mind, I clicked on the link, so I never actually had to type it. But it's for people who are traveling. If you're traveling somewhere, you can expose your itinerary again to friends and family primarily, but there's degrees of separation. So that you might find out that if you're, I work for IBM, as I've said a couple times, a couple more, that one of my colleagues might be in the same town I'm going to be in, and we could meet for dinner, rather than eating separately alone in our hotel rooms. And it's a whole lot more fun than something else. So, another very low technology way of doing this. One of the big things that Tim mentions is that it's lightweight programming. I know this is a computer science colloquium, so everyone was ever. Who is not a computer science major? Okay, what? Great, good. And what are your majors?
Physics.
Physics? Okay. A couple other people fessed up. I'm just curious.
I teach in the philosophy department.
Okay.
Media relations.
Media relations. Okay. So you're not trained professional programmers, but there's now tools that will let you get a site up. Certainly a blog site requires no programming whatsoever at this point. And even an interesting site requires very little. There's one tool I really like called Ruby on Rails, where you can put together an application very easily, sophisticated database-backed application that takes all the hard work out of it. And the language is very, very interesting. It was written by a guy in Japan, and it's got very loose syntax that you can change. You can inject things right into the kernel of the language. And it's fun. And slowly working with my lack of spare time on a site to keep track of the wines I drink. See? That my wife and I drink, so we know what there is. Clearly, the obvious way to do that is to write it down on a piece of paper and carry it with me to school. Well, what's the fun of that? And I could put it on my iPhone or some other data thing and just carry it around. But if I put it on the web and make it available, other people may be able to make comments on it, and I can learn about things that I wouldn't have found myself. I can be warned off on things that I might have otherwise bought. And the amount of programming required is really, really very little. If I could get 2 days, it would be up and running. And if I ever do it, it'll be up on my phone. It's been almost running for, I bought the domain 4 months ago. So it'll get there someday. But the amount of code required is very, very little, and the amount of coding thought required is very, very little. It's really something that a non-programmer can do. The Open Social is talking about me taking that next step, so it's easy to expose your things to the social networks. And they were supposed to announce that today, and I read all about it on the blog yesterday because people don't seem to be able to keep secrets very well. Is that about, yeah.
One more question, then
Sure.
it's on delicious.
Okay.
So what's your opinion?
Delicious is wonderful. I use it occasionally. One of the problems that I do want to talk about is fragmentation. But I do blog things and mark them on delicious. It's one of the best ways I know of to find them again later and have other people find them. There was a lot of work done on whether the tags actually converge or not. And there was a paper at CSCW last year. This is basically, yeah, not really. They did it on a movie site where they ran an experiment. And they had some people with prompted tags and some people with free tags. And they didn't find major differences in how much people tag. Because really, if you're tagging for yourself, use terms that are idiosyncratic. If you think you're tagging for an audience, you go out of your way to find terms that are not idiosyncratic. So inside, again, when we talk about inside the firewall, which is another commercial, I talked about IBM and our use of Web 2.0. So I said we had news groups, get my numbers right, 26 years ago, effectively, on mainframes, to talk about the PC when it was new. It was really exciting. People wanted to talk, and friendships were made through that means. We've had our corporate directory for as long. It used to be mainframe hosted, now it's got lots of nicer attributes. We've had a blogging site. I started a blogging site in 2001 inside IBM, and nobody cared. And I turned it off after about 6 months because the software was getting obsolete, had security holes. We restarted it about 3 years ago, and suddenly the environment was very different, and it became extremely popular. IBM's produced a product called Lotus Connections, which we just shipped a little bit earlier this year, which has a blogging tool, which is the same one we're using. It's built on Roller. It has the directory that we're using. It has, I want to make sure I get the pieces right, it has activities, which are important. It has a tagging system, we call it Dog Ear. And it's very much like Delicious. It's also something you can host for yourself inside your own firewall. We use that very, very actively in IBM. In fact, one of the problems in our intranet is search. Google works so well because there's so many people with pointers. Anybody can make a website and point at sites that you find interesting, and Google uses that. And in the pre-search engine optimization days, that was really sufficient. Now you need things like Dog Ear and Delicious to help. But on the intranet, there are two problems. One is that there is, instead of a right answer, there is the right answer. There's only one answer that's right for a personnel problem or an HR problem. It's the official answer. And it's only going to appear in one place on the official website. And nobody's going to point to it, except the official website, because you're not going to write down, well, if I have an employee with this problem, here's where you go. So you don't have the web of links that Google has, and therefore the internal search tends to be suboptimal. And this has been found with lots of enterprises who use Google appliance or use anything else, because you don't have the richness of data. What we have now with Dog Ear is we encourage people to tag. If you found something somehow that's useful, tag it. The mere fact that you tagged it increases its value to your fellows, because it's something that's good. Now, if you tag it garbage, perhaps not, but if you tag it, that's a vote for it, effectively, and it's helping to get the effect of page rank. Similarly, if you're searching based on a tag, my Ubuntu problem, I search for Ubuntu, I have a much better chance of finding it through the tags than through the text, because that stream is not the fact that people tag things is useful. The other piece is wikis. Wikipedia is, of course, the source of all truth. And internal to a company, wikis are really, really valuable, especially if you augment them with, if not access control, at least accountability. So we have a major wiki site in IBM that anybody can play with. And then we have lots and lots and lots and lots of smaller wikis. My half-time job is basically enhancing intention based on Moonlight, has structured data and tagging. We use it in the research group for planning our year cycle. So project proposals go out there and get commented on by other people, get tagged by people, and develop collaboratively. And it works surprisingly well. It's not, I added a discussion facility to it, which doesn't get a whole lot of traction because people are reluctant to ask pointed questions in public. But it does trigger them in the email, does trigger evolution. Instead of pointed questions, someone may make a suggestion that looks better. And last year was an experiment. This year was part of the process. And when I check my mail, I'll have a little more people things saying, could you give so-and-so access to it because they need it to evaluate the proposals. So again, it's a social tool that seems to be working. I'm glad somebody else is conversing, because I was just looking and saying, this is not a conversation. I'm doing too much talking.
I have another question on it, is that maybe you remember 15, 16 years ago, there was quite a bit of excitement about something called push technology.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever happened?
Whatever happened to push? Well, one thing is that the company that really had the big piece of it, whose name has escaped me, I used to know it, got greedy. They got very, very big. They were offered some huge amount of money in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and they thought they could go there backward. I think that was it. They thought they could do everything, and it failed because it was being used to push ads to people that were irrelevant and that didn't matter. But push technology has mutated. If you use RSS or Atom feed readers, that's effectively a push technology. It doesn't push it right onto your desktop in your face, although there is a screensaver for the Mac that's an RSS reader, so you can see your headlines. I find that distracting, so I don't use it. But it's mutated to that, so I get things pushed at me, and of course email is the original push technology, and I get way too much pushed at me that way. But with RSS, I get to choose what I want to have pushed to me, and how often I want to have it pushed to me, because really, it's not a push, it's a pull. But it feels like a push. So that's what happened to it, is it got big. The people who did it got too greedy, and they were trying to do a little bit too much with it. But it's turned out to be useful. The firewall, when you have an applet that updates itself when you go to Gmail, a lot of that's cached on your machine, and that's effectively push. So it's now in the background. It's just one of the technologies that makes things work. And I think that's what's going to happen to a lot of Web 2.0 snaz, is that it's going to just be, well, of course you have it. Of course you have a mobile phone. Everyone has a mobile phone. Of course you get text messages. Everyone uses text messages. And a few years ago, that wasn't the case.
Well, at IBM, do you use instant messaging?
Oh, do we use instant messaging? We've been using instant messaging since, well, the primitive forms of this, I'd go back at least 30 years to my 27 years to my certain knowledge. On the mainframe, we had instant messaging, but we didn't have awareness of doing that. Because the mainframe, you had one application operating. So I could message you and interrupt and clear your screen, and you could message me. Or I could ask if you were logged on. So there was even that level of awareness. But you couldn't have a buddy list of 20 people and subconsciously know that they logged. Later, we developed our own code. We bought a company in Israel that did something called Buddy, and it's now Lotus same time instant messaging, released 7.5.1, and we can rely on it. In the year 2000 run-up, instant messaging was a huge part of the emergency planning, so that people could communicate if the phones went down, because we knew that the IM code was Y2K clear. We weren't 100% sure that the phone company was. And in the event, that one turned out to be a well-prepared for non-disaster. The only reason it was a non-disaster was it was so well-prepared for. But there were some Y2K bugs that snuck in. I had one on my use stand before they went to code. Yeah.
What kind of world is Web 3.0?
What?
4.0 going to be like?
Web 3.0, some people say that's the virtual world. That's the second life is Web 3.0. I heard someone else say, well, Web 3.0 is when you won't even know that it's there. It's just in the background. I lean more towards that. That was on some podcast that I don't remember what it was at this point, because that's another Web 2.0 application, another push technology that just happened. Now when I go to the gym, I have something to listen to. So I think it's going to be when it's really just in the background. Your social network is on your laptop, it is on your phone, it is available. You have the kind of contact and presence you want, and you have the ability to walk away from it. That right now is one of the hardest pieces, is that people can't draw that line. The line don't work 24/7. They don't want to be interrupted 24/7. At least most people don't. And I think the BlackBerry trend is going to die down as people find it necessary in their personal life. I do not have a BlackBerry. I had one for 2 days and realized this is not for me. I'm too much of an addictive personality. I kept checking. One of the best features about the iPhone is that it does not get through my corporate firewall. So I can't check my corporate mail with it at all. Gmail is fine. That's low volume and it's more fun. So I was very happy when they put the iMac support on. But I don't want it to connect to work. And I don't publish my cell phone number at work. I choose to pay for that out of my own pocket so I don't have to publish it because I want to control that level of interaction. That doesn't mean I wasn't on my computer at 11 last night doing things for work. But then I at least was not pushed at. Yeah, you had a question, I thought.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Okay.
It's kind of shifting topics a little bit, but wanted to ask you, one of the needle that I think that's heading for the Web 2.0 bubble is privacy and content ownership. And what has IBM done to think about this so that they don't get caught in that verse?
We've been involved in privacy for a long time. There's an annual conference that ACM hosts, Computer Freedom and Privacy. And we've been involved in that for many years. I was on the steering committee for a number of years. I've actually drifted away from it because my interests changed. But we've had privacy policies and we've worried about it for a long, long time. And I think you're right, the targeted marketing. An ad that's relevant is valuable, can be valuable to you, but you start wondering how much do they know and how much do they correlate after the fact. And we're looking at it. I'm not in that part of the business. We have a very active group that looks at privacy. And I think you're right. Somebody's going to discover just how much data those companies have. And there's already a lot of pushback. Google knows, as I say, Google really does know more about me than I'd like to think about. And most of it is accurate. And my mail goes through them. And my searches go through them. So it's a little scary, yeah.
I don't think many people do how much people do until you see where you search in the past.
Right.
I mean, when they released that, it was a few years in the past for me. And I don't remember searching for assets.
Right, and yet I find it valuable to be able to go back to my previous searches and say, okay, that didn't work, let me go on from there. So, as long as you find the benefits, as long as it's not abused, people will be happy. But certainly there are countries where it will be abused. And there are worries that this may become one of them in the future. If you read Bruce Schneier is a security expert, and he writes a column for Wired, and he writes a lot of essays, and he's a long Schneier on security. He's the one who wrote Applied Cryptography, if anyone's gotten into that. And he was writing today about the war on different, because people are being asked to report anomalies and people will react. So it's an interesting column. You can find it through the San Jose, through Good Morning Silicon Valley, had a link to that. Easiest way to chase it down.
It's also posted on Slashdot.
Okay. Slashdot's one I don't look at because the volume just got too high for me to tolerate. But I'm sure it's it. So before I leave, I'm obliged to give a word from my sponsor, which is IBM's academic initiative. And I'll make sure Dr. Lynn has the information on this. I believe you do already. But we want people to be more technically literate and be able to actually work in the 21st century computing environment. Which goes back, a lot of things never go away. Mainframes, please God, will be here forever. Because they make a lot of money, and I like that. But they had to be brought into the 21st century too, and it's been an interesting prospect. So we're partnering with people who really like open standards and open source, and that is a huge change for a company like IBM. We grew up in a proprietary era, and we nearly died as a result of that. There's nobody better than somebody who came through a near-death experience to preach the gospel. There's a lot of stuff, and Sharon McFadden is the representative for this area, and she can reach the number there, and I'll make sure you have this slide. So I did want to mention that. It's free, there's a lot of good stuff, we run contests. Our developer website is very good, that's one of the places I can be directed by Google to find things. So I'm not saying I look for it there, I look Google's for me. But it does have a lot about technologies like Java. So I got 12:46, so you say I have to stop. I'd be happy to keep talking, or have you talked to me, because I get way too much, and I apologize for that. It wasn't this conversation, because I'd like, that allows me to actually have